Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, Canine Behaviourist at Good Doggy. So Melissa is asking whether she could train her dog to ignore reactive dogs that she's walking past when she's on her walks. So this is a really interesting question. We will all have come across the situation at some point. Maybe our dogs are walking really calmly down the road with us, and another dog from nowhere suddenly starts to lunge and bark at our dog. Maybe they're behind a fence, or perhaps they're out in the park and we're trying to pass them in the streets. But for whatever reason, that dog is not coping with our presence. So can we train our dog just to ignore that? Can we train them just to walk past as if nothing is happening, focus on us and carry on just as usual? Well, yes is the short answer, maybe. We know that guide dogs can do this, and other service dogs also are trained to ignore stuff that's happening around them. They have to carry on with their work regardless of what's going on. So we know that they can be trained to ignore this, but let's remember that an awful lot of training will go into those guide dogs, and they will be specially selected to be good at this to begin with. So they started off with a dog that's more likely to ignore this kind of behavior, and then they really worked on it and enhanced that ability. We don't do that with our pet dogs. So should this be a part of our socialization? For me, this is a big no. I don't think it's either of the dog's best interests for us to teach our dog to walk past theirs nice and calmly. Socialization should be about normalizing things in our environment. It should be about teaching our dogs to feel safe. And actually, it's not okay when a dog is showing aggression to our dog, and we don't want to normalize that. We don't want them to think that when a dog is behaving aggressively towards them, that they should just ignore that. Remember that aggressive behavior is threatening behavior. The dog, when they are behaving that way towards us, they're trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us that they want to be left alone. They're trying to tell us to keep away from their territory, to keep away from them, keep away from their owners. And what we don't want to do is to make our dog think that it's okay to ignore that. When a dog is telling them to go away, what we should be doing really is encouraging them. If we try to get them to walk past, this could really skew their ability to read situations and dogs in the future, and this could be very dangerous for them. If we keep teaching them that this is normal and that we shouldn't worry about this other dog, then potentially they could go up to a dog in the future that actually is giving them very strong warnings to stay away, and they could get themselves into trouble. So this could be a disaster for future interactions in the park. Really what we want them to do is we want them to be afraid of a threatening dog. We don't want them to get used to it and accept that as a part of life. All of our bodies, our dogs' bodies, our bodies, all mammal bodies are designed to try to avoid pain and avoid conflict. As soon as any potential situation comes around, our bodies release adrenaline, and that prepares us for whatever might come towards us. So that prepares us to run fast, it prepares us to fight harder, and it prepares us to keep ourselves safe. So what we would be encouraging is our dogs to ignore that warning sign, ignore all of that adrenaline, and try to not feel anxious, not feel ready, responsive to this situation that is ahead of them. What we should be doing is we should be respecting the other dog's voice. They've asked us to leave. We should respect that, and we should do what they've asked us to do. And rather than just stand there with their dog screaming at us, we should choose to move away. We don't want to encourage our dog to become defensive. We also don't want them to start predicting situations that they could become defensive. We can't expect them just to ignore these instincts to protect themselves. So actually, for our own dog's perspective, this is really not a great situation and could lead to problems in the future. From the other dog's perspective, they're trying to tell us something. They're trying to communicate to us, to their owner, to other people, to everybody. They're trying to tell us, I need space. I want you to leave. You're scaring me. You're threatening my territory. And we know that behavior will escalate. So the very first sign of a problem might be a bit of a stiffening up, a bit of staring, making themselves look tall, perhaps a twitchy tail, that kind of thing. But when that gets ignored, then they increase the intensity of their communication. So that can quickly lead to a little bit of side eye, maybe a little bit of a kind of a twitchy lip, that kind of thing. Eventually we end up with growling, snapping, and this will continue to escalate through the scale until eventually there's nowhere left to go and you end up with full-on aggression. The dog is now trying to bite and defend itself in the strongest possible way. Aggression is communication. It starts very mild and it will escalate through that scale. So when we ignore their messages to us, when they're trying to tell us to leave them alone or that they're scared, if we ignore that, then we're forcing that dog as well now to escalate their behavior. As they escalate their behavior, then our dog will then feel more threatened and they will escalate their behavior. And before you know it, we could end up with a reactive dog of our own. So when we don't leave, that adrenaline starts to rise. At some point, reactive brain will kick in and the emergency system will activate. This system is there only to keep us safe. So when our dog is exposed to these kind of situations regularly enough, this will become a habit. But on this first time, their behavior, their feelings, their responsiveness will start to grow the more defensive the other dog is or the more aggressive the other dog is. At some point they'll go over threshold. So this is the point where they're no longer paying attention, they're no longer considering the environment they're in or the other dog. Their reactive brain is now taken over and it is only concerned with keeping them safe from pain and fear. So once the whole situation is resolved, that adrenaline will start to die off and the body will kind of do a little bit of a post-performance recce. It'll have a little think what was successful about what we did. So remember that the reactive brain's only goal is to keep you safe from pain and fear. And if after your performance, your reactive response, you have remained safe, then that will now become a default response. And what happens with reactive behavior is because it's so important, it's so primal, that the brain will start to associate similar situations with that one. So it will start to look for similar things. So maybe the first time you try to walk past a reactive dog, it's a small white dog that is shouting at you from across the road. Next time you come out for a walk, your dog's brain may well look at other things that are like that. So it could be large white dogs. It could be just dogs on the other side of the road. It could be just white dogs. It could be things that look like dogs. So that could be all dogs. It could end up with small children that also kind of from a distance might be recognized as a dog. But this now stops making a lot of sense because your dog's brain is generalizing everything in their environment. It's not stopping to figure out, oh, actually, that is just a small child. Of course it is. I can see that. It's just going, that looks a little bit like a small dog. And that response that was so successful last time will get triggered. And then you have a behavior problem on your hands. So trying to walk past a reactive dog is really not good for that dog. And it's not good for your dog because you are risking that becoming something that they start to foresee and something they start to become reactive to. And before you know it, you're going to be just like that dog owner, standing there with their reactive dog, wondering why people keep standing there looking at you and don't just go away. Years ago, I used to take my dogs sometimes with me to consultations when people had reactive dogs. And this is the exact reason why I don't do this now. With every experience that they have of a reactive dog, they then become more and more defensive and responsive to that situation. They start to predict it. They start to refuse to get in the car just in case we're going on a consultation, we're going to work, you know. So from my own personal experience, I can say that this is not a useful thing to do, to expose your dog to other reactive dogs in that kind of way. Well, I would say we should be doing the exact opposite of that. We should be advocating for our dog and taking them away from that situation. We want them to make a good decision when they see a situation like that. What we don't want is them to stop and look at it. We don't want them to get involved in it. We want them to leave. We want them to recognize there's a problem. We want them to be scared of it to a degree, and we want them to come to you, and we want you to leave. So that other dog is begging for space, give them space. Even if you can't give them space and keep moving forward, maybe you can just go a different way. I want your dog to feel like you are making good choices for them and you're encouraging that kind of good habit and good behavior. I want you to show that you're protecting them from this stuff. So just like you would if you met somebody in the street with a child that maybe wasn't an ideal person, you want to keep them safe from that kind of stuff, and you don't want them to think that that's not safe. The same thing with our dogs. We need to take our dogs away and reinforce the fact that leaving is the best option. So hopefully that has answered that question, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye bye.